Okay, so we're going to talk tonight about purpose. You know, I don't know about you, but you might be, if the camera's shaking a little bit, my dog just knocked it. So, so I don't know about you, but a lot of people might be feeling a little frustrated right now. Their careers are possibly on hold. They've possibly been laid off from their job because of all this coronavirus stuff. Or maybe their hours have been reduced. Maybe they're overwhelmed with their kids and drowning and feel like, I just can't make it. I'm sure you could insert a Jim Gaffigan joke or two in there. Like, you know, what's it like to have 4 kids in New York? Well, imagine you're swimming with a baby and somebody hands you another. But, you know, you're probably feeling a little frustrated. You're probably feeling maybe a little beat up. And you're kind of wondering, you know, are you going to be able to do your job next week, next month, 6 months from now? Are your financial plans, the career decisions, the things that you are thinking about doing for yourself, are those plans going to be ruined because of the coronavirus or because of the economy? And maybe you feel like maybe somehow, you know, some of these things are tied to what God's purpose is for you in your life. And it's easy to do that. Often we think about what we do as being tied to our purpose and God's purpose for our lives. And we see the coronavirus perhaps as a threat to that, at least in the end term, like, you know, in the next couple months. Maybe we're not thinking about that in the next few years, but, you know, you might be sitting there thinking, man, this could ruin my finances for 5, 10 years, and how's that going to play out for God's purposes in my life? Well, I was thinking tonight about a passage from Romans chapter 8, where it says, in Romans chapter 8, verses 28 and 29, and we know that God causes all things to work together for the good of those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that he would be the firstborn among many brethren. Now, if you're thinking about purpose in terms of what you do, if you're thinking of terms of purpose in your identity and your occupation and all that sort of stuff, and man, maybe the coronavirus is going to threaten some of that, I think you're thinking about purpose all wrong. You see, as Christians, our purpose doesn't really have so much to do anything with what we do. You know, I have a purpose that is greater than anything that I do, and that's ultimately God's purposes for me. And it says here in Romans 8 that God causes all things to work together, that is, all things, including the coronavirus, to the good of those who love God, who are called according to his purposes. See, it's not about my purpose. What's my calling, my purpose, my ministry? Why am I here? What did God put me here to do? No. It's not about any of that. Rather, it says that it's about his purpose. His purpose and my purpose aren't exactly always the same thing. My purpose, I can be a little at odds with God on what my purpose for being is, and his purpose can be different than mine. And in fact, I'd say, you know, what we're called to do in our day-to-day, or, you know, some grand scheme, some sort of sense of destiny, is quite small, actually. In fact, we may do 1,000 things in our lives that have nothing to do, that we have no awareness of how those 1,000 things may impact the lives of other individuals. And maybe, you know, God set us up in this life to do those things, and we were totally oblivious to the fact that we even did them. But, you know, we're ultimately called, the Bible says, according to his purposes. And it says, those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. So God's purpose in everything that you're doing in life is ultimately his purpose for your life. His purpose for your life is, the Bible says, is to be conformed to the image of his Son. And I think that's awesome. That's amazing. My purpose, God's calling on my life, ultimately doesn't have to do anything whatsoever with what I do between the hours of 9 and 5, or what I do on the weekends, or, you know, what I do with my podcast or my blog or my church or my ministry or any of that sort of stuff. My purpose, according to Romans 8, 28 and 29, is ultimately about his purpose, and his purpose is to conform me to the image of his Son, and God is causing all things that happen in this world to that end. So if you're wondering what's happening with the coronavirus, what's happening with the economy, what's happening with the politicians, what's happening with all these things that are going on, well, ultimately I would encourage you just to see the handiwork of God in your life to ultimately conform you to the image of his Son. to make you look more and more like Jesus at the end of the day. Because you know what? You could be frustrated in a million things that you do. You could accomplish nothing for the rest of your life. You could die tomorrow. But if at the end of your life you've been conformed to the image of Jesus Christ, then God's purpose for you has ultimately been fulfilled in this world. So everybody, this has been Jimmy Humphrey. This has been my devotional tonight on Romans 8:28 through 29. Take care, everybody, and look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night for whatever we talk about then. Take care, everybody, and God bless.